It's 11 a.m. here in Seoul. I'm Oh Soo-young at the Arirang News Center. We're breaking into our regular programming to bring you a live briefing from the South Korean health authorities on the coronavirus outbreak here in the country. In just a few moments, we're going to cut into this Headquarters government complex with simultaneous interpretation for you in English. We're going to go into the briefing room now where Yoon Tae-ho, Director General of Public Health Policy, will be sharing the latest figures and updates on the coronavirus situation here in the country. So he will be telling us about how many additional infection cases there were, especially with the sudden outbreak of cluster infections in the capital of Seoul. And we're going into the briefing room right now, and he will soon be making his way to the podium, as you can see there. So it looks like the briefing is just about to begin.
First of all, here is Mr. Yoon Tae-ho with the briefing on the COVID-19 response. Let us now begin our regular briefing for June 11th, Thursday. As of today midnight, we have 45 new cases. 40 of them are local transmissions, while 5 are imported cases from overseas. As of today midnight, the total number of confirmed cases stands at 11,947. And of them, this also includes 1,312 imported cases, as well as 1,017 people who are in quarantine undergoing treatment. There were no additional fatalities as of today, and the death toll remains unchanged at 274. The KCC held a meeting today presided over by Health Minister Bang Neung-hoo. We discussed issues of the quarantine measures in the metropolitan area, as well as quarantine in wedding halls, as well as other event halls. And Health Minister Bang Neung-hoo has stressed the fact that the recent cases, most of the cases were concentrated in the Seoul metropolitan area, and he also said that we need to identify the high-risk facilities and also preemptively inspect all of the blind spots of quarantine. And he also said that if there are any attempts to hinder quarantine measures by intentionally breaching quarantine protocols, leading to a big cluster infection, these people will be subject to legal action. And he asked the public to comply with the quarantine measures going forward. Here are some of the updates on the domestic infections as of today. As of midnight today, we have 45 new cases. Of them, 40 are local transmissions, and all of them were clustered in the metropolitan area. During the past 2 weeks, when we look at the outbreak trends, we see that 88% of the total domestic cases were in the Seoul metropolitan area. Especially after June, 97% of the new cases are clustered in this area. They range from religious small group meetings, club meetings, and indoor sports facility, as well as door-to-door sales group meetings. And there are also cases that are on the rise with unidentified sources of infection. And we are also witnessing a big increase in the number of the proportion of elderly confirmed cases, which amounts to about 70% of the cases related to the door-to-door sales group meetings. These people are over the age of 60. And it is very difficult for us to look deeply into all of these establishments, and we can only do so with close cooperation and participation by the public. We ask the public to refrain from going to any social gatherings or meetings if they are unnecessary, and we once again highlight you to not visit crowded and confined and enclosed spaces. And next are some of the updates on our inspection on the wedding halls. The Welfare Ministry, the Gender Equality Ministry, as well as the KCC, we have been carrying out a close inspection on the quarantine measures for the wedding halls, and we have been distributing these to these wedding halls. And to this end, the Ministry of Gender Equality, they have also established a TF team which looks into the major wedding halls hospitals, which are about 64 major ones in the areas, and we carried out a pan-government inspection. And as a result, we found that many protocols of wearing of face masks and disinfection and ventilation were also very well kept. However, there were some areas including distancing among the participants, and the dining places were not kept very well. Out of the 64 wedding halls, there were only 8 places that had the so-called zigzag seatings to enable people to sit apart from each other. And we would closely cooperate with the local governments to enable to comply with the live quarantine measures at wedding halls and other event halls that are related to family gatherings as well. And we are also carrying out increased inspection on the call centers, iced tea companies, as well as meat processing companies, about 1,700 of them. We are conducting these investigations together with the Labor Ministry. And we are also closely monitoring the conditions of the quarantine measures for business establishments that employ foreigners. And in the process, we are also closely monitoring that we don't have any blind spots for foreign workers. And working together with the marine industry, we are closely cooperating the beaches as well as other water-related facilities, and also we are cooperating with the Transportation Ministry to look at intensified quarantine for logistics and distribution centers. Likewise, we are carrying out pan-government initiatives, cooperating with the local governments as well to intensify our quarantine measures. And we ask each of the business establishment to have a tailored quarantine protocol, and please abide by these protocols strictly. And if any breaches happen, please remember that you could be subject to legal actions. And currently, we have been carrying out the intensified investigation into about 700 people who are working at 480 places and that have breached or not complied with these quarantine measures. And we are also seeing an increasing of the cluster infections in the metropolitan area. And in the metropolitan area, we have a total of 1,711 hospital beds, and of them, a total of a little over 900 are available to treat COVID-19. So we are not under much medical burden. However, we need to prepare for the worst-case scenario going forward. And we ask the members of the public, and especially for the residents in the metropolitan area, to comply with quarantine measures, including wearing face masks and distancing. And I am aware that you all know of these measures very closely. And please remember that any of the places or venues could be open to the risk of COVID-19, and please comply with measures going forward.
That was a live briefing from the South Korean health authorities you just heard there, telling us that there were 45 additional confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the nation. That brings the accumulated total to 11,947. There were no new deaths, which means that the death toll stands at 276. Well, that wraps up our coverage of this morning's briefing. Thank you for staying with us, and we'll be back shortly with our regular midday newscast at 12 p.m. Korea time. Bye for now.